Larissa worked for an hour and thought that her daughter would most likely marry this Sergey. It's not that I didn't like him, but she, of course, would have wanted something completely different. Maybe she was very afraid for her daughter that Sergey would give up on her, as Elena's father had done in his time, abandoning his wife and daughter when she was still very little. Larissa will never forget that day. She came home from work then, thinking that she would quickly cook a delicious dinner, and they would all sit down together, eat and talk. But the apartment was quiet. She thought that Ivan had not yet come home from work, that she would have just enough time to prepare everything by the time he arrived. 15 minutes later, a neighbor brought Larissa home from kindergarten and asked, "Where is your husband going? Is he planning a business trip or something?" It felt like he had packed all his things for the north. "What are you talking about, Sveta? What things?" He wasn't planning anywhere. And besides, his job doesn't involve business trips. It's strange, but I'm not blind. I saw his suitcase myself. Oh, my God. Why are you looking at me like that? Go and look in the closet. I'll undress you to the knees. Larissa went into her husband's room and opened the closet. Only her things were there, but her husband's things were gone. She sat down on the bed in bewilderment, not knowing what to think. "Everything was fine with us," she whispered. "Larissa, I need to already, because my work pelvis has arrived. I need to have dinner, because if I don't feed him on time, he gets angry. I'm going. I'll come back a little later." Larissa didn't have the strength to even utter a word. She nodded silently, thinking about what could have happened that Ivan did this. Silently left, without saying anything. Besides, she would have seen if it were different. Of course, they hadn't talked much lately. Her husband was thoughtful, and she thought he was having problems at work. Half an hour later, Larissa pulled herself together and went to the kitchen. A delicious dinner had canceled everything out. She decided to cook some porridge for herself and her daughter. "My little flower, what kind of porridge are you going to eat?" "I don't want porridge. I want fried potatoes." Aliona whined. "Don't pay. I'll give you some potatoes. Then go and play with your dolls." "I don't want to. Dad and I were going to watch football together, but for some reason he's not here yet. Let me turn on the TV for you, and you can start watching it yourself. And then when Dad comes, you can tell him everything." "Okay, great. I'll even show him how the football players played. By the way, have you seen where my ball is?" "Elena, let's not argue. You know perfectly well that I only allow you to play with a sword outside, but not in the house. Then how will I show Dad how they played? I think we'll think of something. And now run into the room and watch your footballs." Larissa was peeling potatoes and thinking about how this had happened. Then, wiping her wet hands on her apron, she went to the phone and dialed her best friend Natasha's number. "Natasha, hi, it's me. Can you come over? I need to talk to you." "Hi, what happened?" "If it's nothing serious, then I can only come tomorrow. Don't forget, I have a personal life too." "Sorry, I didn't think. That is, I wanted to say. In short, I feel bad. But if you can't, I'll understand." "Well, I can hear from your voice that something is wrong." "Okay, I'll be there in an hour." Natasha arrived not in an hour, but in 2. But Larissa didn't care. The main thing was that her favorite friend was nearby, and she would tell her everything now. Natasha walked into the kitchen, smelling of expensive perfume. She was wearing an evening dress, beautiful makeup and hair. It was obvious that they had returned from a date. "Well, tell me what happened to you." "Can you imagine? I come home from work, and my neighbor tells me that she saw my husband with suitcases. I looked in the closet, and it's true. He took all his things. Now I don't know what to think." "You don't need to think anything here. It's clear as day that he dumped you." "Natasha, what are you saying? How could he dump me without saying anything? That's low wrong. How could he do that?" "Okay, why would he do that to me, to my daughter? But you can't admit the thought that he has another woman, that he loves her more than life itself." "Well, don't worry about your daughter. I'll be the only one helping her, for example." "What? Don't I deserve to be talked to after so many years?" At that moment, Larissa understood everything. She turned to Natasha and asked, "So did he leave for you?" "Yes, for me. And don't throw a fit. I don't care what you say." Larissa silently stood up and went to the front door, opened it and said, "Get out." Natalia snorted and headed for the door, and then, before leaving, she turned around and said, "Do you want me to tell you what your mistake was?" "I don't need it. It's no use anymore. I know my mistake. I shouldn't have been friends with you, because Ivan hinted to me that you—" But I didn't believe it, and now I see that he was right after all. "What, John? Couldn't you say that about me?" Natasha screamed. Larissa did not listen any further. She simply closed the door in her face. That night she did not sleep, as well as the following nights. She had lost a lot of weight from worrying. Only Matriona Stepanovna, a colleague, brought her to her senses. "Larissa, come on, pull yourself together. Your daughter is growing up, and you have completely lost your mind. This will not do. If you do not value your health, it is your body, but the child is not to blame. Do you understand me? What do you all want from me? What do you want? Well, health. My husband left me. He left me for his best friend, and you are talking about health? I don't need anything anymore. After such an ODHIG." After these words, Larissa cried bitterly, and Matriona poured water into a glass and brought it to her. The forces nearby embraced, well, thank God, it broke through. You need to cry. I know from personal experience. Tears will ease your soul. We need to cry. Then it will be easier. I saw that you can't do it, so I brought you to emotions. Cry. Don't be shy. And now you see how much easier it will be for you. On the crying, Larissa calmed down from the table, and there really was such a feeling that she threw some kind of burden off her shoulders. And now listen to me. Throw it all out of your head. Look at your daughter more often. Be glad that you have her. It was hard for me at one time. I went through the same. Only my husband did not have an affair with my friend behind my back, but with my sister. And I thought I would not survive when I caught them together. I even wanted to jump off the bridge to forget about. In short, it was hard. And then how did you get out of that state? You won't believe it. But that night, when I saw them together, I went to the bridge. While I was walking there, I bought some, because I didn't have the courage, but I didn't want to live. I got there. There was a guy standing there looking at the water. I saw that he had even already put his foot down to climb over the railing. That's when it sobered me up. You can't do that with your life. It wasn't given to us to do such things. But I ran up to him, grabbed him, and pulled him down. He fell on me like a sack, muttering something. Then I handed him the bottle. He drank it and calmed down. We sat on that bridge until the morning, complaining about life. Well, and the next morning we left as friends and started dating. And what? Then we got married, had children. That's how we live. My husband, when he found out that I was happy and that everything was great, left my sister. He kept coming to see me, but I have a short conversation with traders, and I let him down the stairs once. I threatened the police that if he showed up here again, I would file a report against him. I see. How come you went through this too? My dear, no, first and foremost, no, and last. Families rarely last a lifetime. Anything can happen, I tell you. And you stop thinking about it. Your friend did everything to take him away from me. But the question is, will she be able to keep him? That's what they don't think about. You see, when a man leaves his family so easily, you should think about whether he is needed at all or not. But it happens that love passes. There are many factors, for example, or everything is not so good in bed. It happens. But we are people, and not animals. We have a language. We need to talk, and not be silent and endure. You are a wonderful woman, beautiful and decent, and your daughter is like a doll. And I saw your husband, well-groomed, always clean. I don't know what they need. Apparently they wanted an adventure. I don't know what I'll tell you. That he will come back to you, you'll see. And it's up to you to decide whether to take him back or not. 5 years passed. Aliona was already in school. Ivan kept knocking on Larissa's doors, trying to improve their relationship again. But she was adamant. She didn't want to step on the same rake again. Larissa, why are you still angry with me? Well, forgive me. The devil got into my head. Natasha was like a drug addict, and I didn't even understand what happened. Only later did it dawn on me that it was amazing, because I love you, not her. And what should I do now? Jump for joy or what? Live on as you want. I don't care anymore. Larissa really didn't feel anything for her ex-husband anymore. Everything had passed. Moreover, she knew that men really liked her, because during this time she had calmed down, put herself in order, and looked gorgeous. Tears meet me. I won't forbid you. Don't even come near me on the stone, Larissa. But you love me. I can see it in your eyes. But you couldn't forget everything so easily. You could, and faster than you think. So I think you've understood yourself, so leave me alone. Ivan didn't calm down. He began to constantly meet Lena from school and, naturally, ask her for help. Mom, let Dad come to us for the weekend. He said that he will fix the faucet and assemble a new wardrobe. You can't do it yourself, and I've already called a plumber for the weekend. I will do everything for you. So I don't need anything from him. Tell him so. Don't you want to have a family again? No, I don't, especially with your dad. Tell me, could you forgive betrayal? But Mom, everyone makes mistakes, anything can happen. Sometimes you have to give people a chance. I agree, but not in this case. On Sunday, before going to the locksmith, Larissa decided to quickly run to the store, realizing that she would most likely not have time later. Standing in line at the checkout, she did not notice how someone was standing next to her and looking at her intently. Turning around, she saw her ex-girlfriend, who was looking at her with undisguised hatred. Let me look. Have you really become prettier that you got a lover? It's happening now. Do you think I'll start telling you? You're wrong. I have nothing to talk to you about. But thank you for the compliment, really. But I won't say that to you. On the contrary, you've become much uglier. Oh, you slut. Natasha hissed. Who do you think you are? Fanka is vulgar. You thought it wasn't just her face. By me, of course. She wanted to say something else, but the women who were standing with them began to stand up for Larissa. Shut your mouth. She doesn't bother you. Why are you bothering her? This doesn't concern you. We have our own personal scores to settle with her. But, of course, she stole my husband. Now do I owe you anything after this? Larissa smiled. Oh, you're so shameless. The women in line became worried. How shameful, such a disgrace. She couldn't stand it, turned around, and went to another cash register. And Larissa was thinking that she hadn't noticed before that Natalia was a very unpleasant person. After all, she considered her best friend. Larissa looked at her daughter and thought how quickly time flies. Here she was already trying on a prom dress. Adults, you'll soon be trying on a wedding dress for me too. Mom, mine isn't old either, and it wouldn't hurt you to think about your personal life. You're so beautiful. When you come to my school, all my friends envy me. They say you're somehow young and beautiful. Of course, I'm happy to hear it. But I don't want to get married. Wish I know what it's like, and that now I have to give up on myself. Look, your dad is still hanging around you. Besides, I noticed that you were talking. Sometimes you even started drinking tea together in the evenings. So your dad and I are not strangers. Why can't we drink tea together? Besides, I'm tired of driving him away from me. The man doesn't understand that I don't want to see him, so I resigned myself to it. Let it be, I don't care. Maybe you'll come over after all. I can see that Dad really wants this. Elena, stop it. I already told you that it's impossible. After finishing school, she entered the institute. Since childhood, she dreamed of being a doctor. But she doesn't just make women beautiful. Mom, you don't understand how much women want to change something about themselves. So I will change everything they want. What nonsense. I don't understand this. What God gave you, you should cherish it, and not change something in yourself with a scalpel. Yes, I see that talking is useless. But my dad, for example, agrees with me. He says that I think correctly. It's not surprising. Your dad is doing everything to come back to us. Even if you went to work as a loader, he would probably agree with you. And let's get ready, because you and I have a plane in an hour, and your things are not in the suitcase yet. Larissa saved money for this trip for a long time, although they were intended for something else. She was saving it for her daughter to go to college, if she could not get into the budget. But she managed, and then they decided to get vouchers and go to Turkey on vacation. You can't imagine how glad I am that we are going on vacation. I haven't been on vacation for ages. Plus, I bought such a swimsuit that I can't wait to update it. Your swimsuit is awesome. Mom, when you went out in it, Dad's eyes almost fell out. So I see he's going to look at you. I don't care. The vacation in Turkey flew by very quickly. They had a wonderful vacation. Larissa was once again convinced that she really was still pretty, because the men there were running after her. Tops, Manti, I have a beauty. All the men are falling for you. I saw it and I'm glad about it, because it really boosts my self-esteem. After your dad left me, my self-esteem was seriously shaken. Of course, I kept an eye on you, but I still thought that something was wrong with me. And now I'm convinced that I'm okay. They were met at the airport by Ivan, who couldn't find a place for himself. While his girls were resting, he was insanely jealous of Larissa and didn't know what to do to return to his family again. "Well, how was your rest?" he asked when they approached him with their suitcases. "I see that you got a tan, because you both have a great tan." "Yes, it was great. We swam, sunbathed, and even went sightseeing. And Mom was a success there. Whenever we went somewhere, all the men almost turned their heads to follow her. Look, we have a beautiful woman. But she still can't forgive me." "Enough, we can. I'm sick of it. You don't even hear me. You're so fixated on yourself as always. What do you want from me? But I won't live as an unloved person. Do you understand? No. I have nothing left for you. Why all this for Lena? It's so late already. She's grown up. She'll soon have her own family." And Lena listened to her silently, realizing that most likely this was really true. "Forgive me, Dad, but you better leave Mom alone. You really should have thought about it earlier. But now that's it. Your train has left the station." "But honey, everyone makes mistakes. I made a mistake too." "Stop it, I understand. She won't accept you. So just accept it and forget about it." Larissa didn't hear what they were talking about. She was already sitting in a taxi and waiting for her daughter. Lena sat down next to her and told the driver the address of their house. "Why wouldn't Dad come?" "No, Mom. I think I explained to him clearly that he missed his chance and that you won't accept him." "Were you really on his side? What happened to you? I watched you on vacation. I saw how many temptations there were around you, but you didn't bite a single one. And then it became clear to me what an idiot and fool my father is, that he traded you in for some other woman." "Lena, you can't talk about your father like that. This is our problem, and it doesn't concern you. But show him some respect." "What so what?" She told the truth, and that's it. Another 4 years passed. Nothing had changed for Larissa. Home and work. But sometimes she'd have tea in the evenings with her neighbor Vera, with whom she'd been very friendly lately. "And you, in my opinion, have fallen in love. Have you not noticed? How hard it is not to notice. His name is Sergey. He's a year older. He's finishing college. He's also been dating for 3 months. But she hasn't shown him to me yet. I'm not rushing her. Let her decide for herself. And when she's ready, she'll introduce me. Maybe she's afraid. For example, I didn't introduce my Vladislav to my parents for a long time. I'm too young for them to forbid me from dating him. But what nonsense. How can I forbid my daughter to date a man who loves her? What are you saying? What if after my prohibition she never meets a man again, never falls in love again? She'll be talking to me about it all her life. No, I don't want that. Let her fall in love, live, and be happy. You're great, of course. I just thought that after what happened to you, you treat men differently. Vera, understand this happened to me. It doesn't mean that the same will happen to her. And besides, what? Shouldn't you get married after such incidents? You live with your own man, and thank God. Of course, but I'll be honest. We've had our share of bad things too. Why don't you get your personal life back on track? I understand that you don't want to be with Ivan anymore. But there are other men. After we broke up, I realized that I don't want to get involved in this anymore. I went through this once, and I don't want to do it again. Nonsense. Lena will get married, and you'll be left alone. And what will you do then? And you're still very young and beautiful. You need to think about yourself. Lena finally matured enough to introduce her boyfriend to her mother. My mother is very good, don't worry. Besides, she's a beauty to me. You'll be amazed when you see her. Will your father come? Most likely no. Mom didn't invite him. I told you, she never forgave him. But now he rarely comes to us. He realized that she doesn't like him. Larissa opened the door and was stunned. Next to her daughter stood a very handsome young man. She had never met such guys before. Her heart began to pound, but she pulled herself together and invited them into the house. Aliona noticed that her mother was somehow confused and decided to take the initiative into her own hands. "Mom, this is my Sergey. And this is my mother, Larissa Vitalievna." "Nice to meet you, Sergey," Larissa said, and extended her hand to him. "My daughter told me a lot about you. She told me a lot about you, too. Now I see that it's all true. You are very beautiful," Sergey said, and handed her a huge bouquet of roses. Larissa accepted the flowers, invited everyone into the room, where the table was already set. The evening went wonderfully. Sergey turned out to be a very interesting conversationalist, and Larissa talked to him for a long time, asking him about his family and relatives. Then the conversation smoothly moved on to school, and then they started talking about them. That is, about him and Lena. "Yes, I love your daughter. Well, now that I've met you, I'm absolutely sure that I'll propose to her," said Sergey, looking closely at Larissa. "I'll be very happy for you and happy to see you as a son-in-law. Besides, my daughter is crazy about you, and now I understand why." Larissa got up from the table and went to the kitchen to make coffee. She put the Turk on the stove and grabbed her burning cheeks from behind her. What's wrong with her? This had never happened before. Apparently, I'm just overexcited, she thought. After all, it's not every day that a daughter is brought home by her fiancés. They drank coffee, and Sergey got ready to go home. Lena decided to walk him home a little, and Larissa started washing the dishes. After Sergey left, she felt better. Her cheeks stopped burning, and her heart stopped beating fast. "Mom, but how is he?" Lena asked first when she came home. "A wonderful young man. I really liked him," Larissa answered reservedly. "Yara, you know, at home, he really liked me too. He kept telling you how smart and beautiful you are. I even started to feel a little jealous." "Don't talk nonsense. He's just being polite." "Yes, I know. Listen, we need to introduce him to your father somehow. Otherwise he'll come to our wedding, and only there will be a groom. But that's wrong." "Well, it's up to you to decide. Go sit somewhere. And just for me. To our house, please. I don't want to see him here." "Mom, okay, later for you. You're bothered now. I explained everything clearly to him then. He understood everything. I just want you to be friends. After all, we're not strangers." Strangers, and nothing can be done about it." Lena was already in her last year of school, and Larissa was preparing for her daughter's wedding. Every day, Sergey's mother, Tatiana, called her, and together they planned the celebrations. Larissa really liked the family of her future son-in-law, and she also saw how they accepted her daughter. Now they met almost every day. If they didn't go shopping together, they chose a restaurant, a menu, flowers, and everything that was needed for the wedding. "I'm so happy that our son chose Lena. I was so worried that he would fall in love with some country bumpkin or even worse, some loser, and she would ruin my son's life. But now I see how happy he is, because he only talks about you. How cool and good you are. I don't understand. Why does he need to talk about Lena about me? That goes without saying. Only he was always worried about what kind of mother-in-law he would get. But you were happy. We have a really handsome man, Pimples, smart. Of course, Elena's father is also a good person, but I'm surprised why you're not together. It's a long story, Tanya. And besides, I don't even want to remember it. It's all been a long time ago, but it's still unpleasant. But tell me, I'm interested." I asked Sergey, and he told me in a few words. What would I like to hear in more detail? What in more detail? He left for my close friend, that's all. But draw your own conclusions. What a horror! And how vividly did you all experience it? Well, as you can see, I did, and I feel pretty good now. After the wedding, Lena and Sergey decided to live with Larissa. They had a large apartment in the center, so it was very convenient for everyone. Besides, she didn't mind and really wanted to be alone in such a large apartment. Sergey worked in a private clinic, but Elena went to work there after graduating from the institute. and Larissa saw that the young people were very good together and tried not to interfere with them. She often started staying late at work, and if that didn't work out, she would go for a walk in the park or sit in a cafe with a cup of coffee after work. She began to notice that she was thinking about her daughter's husband very often. She understood that it was wrong, that it shouldn't be like this, but she couldn't do anything about it. Besides, she felt that Sergei didn't feel the same way either, because a woman is never wrong in such things. Once, sitting on a bench in the park, she was lost in thought and didn't notice how Sergei came up to her. "Hi." She shuddered and turned her head. Her ex-husband was sitting next to her, looking at her affectionately. "Hi. How did you end up here?" Larissa greeted dryly. "I often come here, just like you. I like to sit on the bench. How is Lena? How is her husband?" "Everything is fine. They live wonderfully. You know, at the wedding I noticed how Sergei was looking at you. I will never forget that look." "And how did he look?" "It was like he wanted to eat you. He doesn't look at his wife the way he looks at you." "Don't be silly. You imagined it. Besides, Sergei or your stomach is beautiful." "No, it seemed so to me. But be careful. I don't get it. What are you talking about? Do you really think that I will hurt my daughter? You've definitely gone crazy. I'm a man, Larissa, and I understand very well what a person is thinking when he looks at me like that. You're not the one who's completely crazy. I'd better go, otherwise we'll agree on all sorts of things." She came home and heard her daughter and her husband arguing about something in the kitchen. "So, young people, what are you arguing about?" she asked, entering the kitchen. "Excuse me, but I can't hear you even on the landing. Sergei won't let me have surgery, but I want to change the shape of my nose a little and plump up my lips." "Well, my daughter, you're already very beautiful. Why should you change anything about yourself? I want to be like you, but you're so much like me. Just wait a little bit, and you'll be a copy of yourself when you get older." I laughed, Larissa. "Sergei, why are you silent? Explain. You're something. This is all nonsense. I agree with you, but we don't have such specialists yet. It's dangerous to have a nose job. And I ask you to wait a little until a specialist in this field arrives. We do minor cosmetic surgeries at our clinic. She wants to change the shape of her nose, and it's dangerous." "Nothing is dangerous. Artem did it. He did it. He decided, and now I have to do it. So I've decided everything, and no matter what you tell me, I don't want to listen to you. So, Sergei, when my daughter talks like that, it means everything is useless. But to be honest, I'm scared for her. Maybe you can try to convince her. Maybe you can ask this Artem to refuse and do this nose." "I'll do everything possible, Larissa Vitalievna, but to convince her or—" Well, they couldn't. Lena was determined to change her appearance and didn't pay any attention to their persuasion. On Monday morning, Lena threw her robe and slippers into her bag, kissed her mother on the cheek, and said, "Mom, in a week you won't recognize me. I'll become more beautiful." "You, daughter, when did you become this beauty? Tell me why all this." "Enough, Ma. I'm an adult, and I know what to do." Larissa went to work. She was restless all day long. Her soul was heavy, and something was bothering her all the time. There was very little time left until the end of the working day, when Sergei called her and said that Lena had become ill on the operating table and that she was now in intensive care. Larissa quickly got ready and went to the hospital where Lena had been taken. The doctors did not let her in, saying that they would do everything possible. She and Sergei sat near the intensive care unit all night, and only in the morning the doctor said that they could not do anything, and Lena had died. Larissa was not herself at the funeral. There were no more tears. She just watched as they buried the coffin of her only daughter, whom she could not dissuade from this operation. After the funeral, she took a vacation and sat at home. She did not want to see or hear anything. The house was constantly ringing, but she did not pick up the phone, and the doorbell rang, but she did not open it to anyone. She felt better only with Sergei, who was next to her all the time. He also took time off. He endured these. They talked about Lena all day long. "You need to cry. Then it will be easier." "I know, but it doesn't work. It seems there are no tears left." Sergei got ready and went somewhere, returned half an hour later with bags full of stuffed products. He was cooking something. Larissa smelled a delicious smell coming from the kitchen. A little later he called her to the table, and she saw the table set for dinner, a bottle of cognac. That evening she got very drunk. This rarely happened to her, because she did not drink alcohol. She did not want to drink that evening, but Sergei persuaded her to have a shot, and then imperceptibly poured her some more, so that she herself did not understand how drunk she had become. Later, what she remembered was how Sergei picked her up in his arms and carried her to the bedroom. The next day she woke up in her bed, realizing that, apparently, she had drunk too much the night before. Her head hurt, and as she was getting up, she noticed that she was lying in bed completely naked. She tried to remember what had happened at night, but her thoughts were confused, and her memories were very fragmentary. Sergei was making coffee, and when she entered the kitchen, he smiled at her and asked affectionately, "Good morning." "My head hurts a lot," Larissa said very much and sank into a chair with a groan. Then, realizing that she needed to figure out what had happened that night, she asked, "Why were you naked in bed?" "I undressed myself." Sergei knelt down in front of her and said, "Larissa, I love you more than life itself. I understand that this is all wrong and that my wife recently died, but I can't do anything about it." Larissa looked at Sergei in horror and thought about what she had done, and he kept saying, "We are adults, life goes on. The fact that I buried my wife doesn't mean that I shouldn't live on. But somehow you don't understand this is wrong. It shouldn't be like this. This is all nonsense. I love you, do you understand? I can't live without you. As soon as I saw you, I realized that you were my woman and that I didn't need anyone else." Larissa didn't understand what was happening. On the one hand, her heart told her that all this was true, but on the other hand, she was terribly drawn to Sergei. After that night, she went back to work, realizing that she needed a change of scenery to think it over properly. But Sergei wouldn't even let her concentrate. He called her every half hour, told her about his love, that he couldn't live without her at all. Now, every night, he came to Larissa, and they made love almost until the morning. Every day, going to work, she scolded herself for giving in to him again, that he had to put an end to it. But night would come, and everything would repeat itself from the beginning. This went on for 6 months. Sergei already felt like the master of the house, told Larissa that he wanted her to be his wife, because he didn't like that they still weren't registered. But Larissa didn't want that. She was confused. She was afraid of being judged by her family and friends, but he didn't care. Sometimes she even began to think that he was obsessed with her, and this began to scare her. A year passed. Larissa woke up in the morning with a severe headache and a feeling of malaise throughout her body. Sergei brought her tea in bed and told her to call work and say that she was sick. "You can't go in this condition. Stay home today. I'll go to work now too, and then I'll come home and be with you." Larissa lay in bed all day. She tried to get up, but realized that dizziness prevented her from moving normally and lay down again. "So let me take you to the hospital tomorrow. You're very pale. You need to get examined." "Okay, but I'll go myself." "No, I'm going to work." "Larissa, stop hiding it. I want everyone to know that you're my woman." "Sergei, I'm not ready for this yet, so let everything remain as it is for now." In the morning at the hospital, she took all the tests and waited for the results. Soon she was called to the doctor, who, smiling, said, "But what? Maybe congratulations, you are pregnant. Of course, you need to be examined again. After all, you are not that young anymore, and besides, there is a big difference between your first child, so you will walk like a first-timer." Larissa left the hospital, not understanding how to react to all this. She quietly walked towards home, when Artem, who was performing operations at the time, caught up with her. "Hello, Aunt Larissa. I have long wanted to talk to you, but I did not know how to approach you. But the burdens of my soul do not allow me to live in peace. Listen, Artem, forgive me, but to be honest, it is not my fault. It is not my fault that Elena died. You better ask Sergei. He will tell you everything." Larissa did not understand what Artem wanted to say by this. She simply turned around and went home. There was no one in the apartment. Larissa decided to go to the cemetery to see her daughter. She hadn't been there for a long time, and she really wanted to talk to her and tell her what had happened to her recently. She went up to her daughter's grave and heard crying and muttering. Coming closer, she heard, "Forgive me, Lena, but I love your mother more than life itself, and you would never have let us live happily. Yes, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have married you. Then you would be alive." Larissa was horrified, beginning to understand what had happened. She went up to her daughter's grave and said, "Okay, now from here on out in more detail. What did you do to my daughter? I just wanted us to be happy, you understand? Elena, if she found out, she wouldn't be able to live with the thought that we were together. Answer me. What did you do to my daughter?" "I switched the medicine she was allergic to." Larissa got tired, sat down on a bench and said, "Get out. I'm calling the police now." She took her bag and took out her phone. Now she knew exactly what to do.